Dr. Amanda Brooks hadn't slept in 36 hours, but she wasn't about to start now. The signal patterns on her monitor had changed 15 minutes ago, and she knew, with the kind of certainty that had defined her career, that this was it. First contact. Real, honest-to-God alien signals, and they were coming in clear as day. Someone's knocking, she muttered, fingers flying across her keyboard while the rest of NASA's Deep Space Division slept. The clock on her wall read 3:47 a.m., but in less than an hour, this quiet July morning would become the most important date in human history. She was reaching for her phone to wake her supervisor when every screen in the facility lit up simultaneously. The signal had become a broadcast. In Madrid, referee Miguel Santos was about to call the final penalty kick of the World Cup when darkness fell over the Santiago Bernabéu Stadium. 100,000 fans looked up, their phones already recording, as a massive ship blocked out the sun. It wasn't alone. They appeared over every major city simultaneously. Rio, Tokyo, New York, London, Sydney. Massive vessels that made aircraft carriers look like bath toys, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb and emit light at the same time. Dr. Brooks. The night guard burst into her lab. "Ma'am, you need to see." "I know, Terry." She didn't look up from her monitor. "Get me General Mitchell. Now." The first transmission came 3 hours later, after social media had exploded with memes about the visitor's timing. Aliens really said penalty kick. Hold my beer. And world leaders had issued their initial statements calling for calm. The message was simple, broadcast in perfect English and every other major Earth language simultaneously. "We are the Kraxan Empire. We rule 10,000 worlds across 12 galaxies. Your planet has been discovered and cataloged. You will submit to imperial authority or face extinction. You have 24 hours to respond." The UN Security Council convened immediately, but it was what happened outside the chamber that would be remembered. Hundreds of delegates from normally adversarial nations gathered in the hallways, their formal rivalries forgotten in the face of humanity's first external threat. Dr. Brooks stood before them, her presentation direct and damning. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their empire has existed longer than our recorded history. But they made one crucial mistake." She clicked to the next slide, showing a decoded portion of their transmission. "They think we're primitive because we lack faster-than-light travel. They expect us to behave like every other pre-FTL civilization they've encountered. To submit." Ambassador Chen from China stood up. "And what makes us different?" Brooks smiled. "Everything." She played a compilation of humanity's responses to the arrival. People taking selfies with the ships, street artists already painting murals of the vessels, children playing aliens and humans in parks beneath the massive ships, a couple in Paris getting married with a Kraxan vessel as their wedding photo backdrop. Every other civilization they've encountered responded with either immediate surrender or panic. We're responding with memes and merchandise. They don't understand us, and that's our advantage. When the UN Secretary-General stepped up to deliver Earth's response 11 hours later, it wasn't what the Kraxan expected. No formal surrender, no desperate pleas. Just a middle-aged diplomat in a simple blue suit, speaking directly to the camera. "To the Kraxan Empire, Earth has received your message. For thousands of years, humanity has dreamed of meeting alien life. We've imagined countless scenarios, created endless stories about this moment. And in all those years, we've learned one thing for certain." He paused, a slight smile crossing his face. "We don't like bullies." The video ended with 2 words that would become humanity's rally cry. "Come try." Within an hour, the clip became the most shared content in human history. #Comiantry trended globally. T-shirts appeared in street vendor stalls. Someone remixed it into a dance track that topped charts in 30 countries. The Kraxan, monitoring Earth's communications, were baffled. This wasn't how primitive species were supposed to react. This wasn't protocol. They had no idea that humanity had never cared much for protocol. Colonel Jack Harrison was playing StarCraft with his 15-year-old daughter when the Kraxan attack began. Later, he'd tell the Joint Chiefs that this was the moment that saved his squadron, and possibly Earth itself. "Dad, you're doing it wrong," Jenny had said, rolling her eyes as she decimated his virtual forces. "You can't just throw everything at them in a straight line. That's like RTS basics." The windows of their Virginia home rattled as the first Kraxan energy weapon struck Washington, D.C., 60 miles away. The green flash lit up the night sky like a second dawn. "Stay in the basement," he ordered, already in commander mode, grabbing his go-bag. Jenny caught his arm. "Remember what I showed you," she said, deadly serious. "Zerg rushed them, Dad." Those words would echo in his mind 3 hours later as he led the 71st Fighter Squadron into humanity's first space battle. The F-52 Thunderhawk was America's newest fighter jet, but compared to Kraxan technology, it might as well have been a paper airplane. The alien ships loomed above, their energy shields gleaming like oil on water. "All units, this is Eagle One." Harrison's voice was steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Conventional wisdom says we don't stand a chance. Good thing we've never cared much for conventional wisdom." His daughter's gaming strategies flashed through his mind. Don't attack in traditional formations. Overwhelm them with unconventional patterns. Use their expectations against them. "Execute pattern Delta Zero," he ordered, just like we practiced. The F-52s split apart, their formation dissolving into what would appear to be chaos to any traditional military observer. The Kraxan ships adjusted their shields, preparing for a standard attack run. They weren't ready for 48 fighters attacking from 48 different vectors, each one flying a pattern based on chaos theory and a teenager's video game tactics. The first missile slipped through their shields, detonating against the capital ship's hull. Then another. And another. The Kraxan commanders, trained in countering traditional military doctrine, found themselves unable to predict where the next attack would come from. Eagle Squadron, weapons free. Give them hell. What followed would be studied in military academies for generations to come. Harrison's squadron, using missiles designed to fight Earth-bound enemies, systematically dismantled a Kraxan capital ship. They exploited gaps in shield coverage that appeared for microseconds, timed their attacks to the enemy's shield refresh rate, and turned their primitive weapons into a devastating force through pure tactical innovation. The capital ship's death throes lit up the eastern seaboard, its massive form breaking apart in the upper atmosphere. The debris would orbit Earth for decades, a monument to humanity's first victory. But the war was far from over. The Kraxan response was swift and merciless. Energy weapons rained down on military bases worldwide. Cities burned. Yet in every target zone, something unexpected happened. In London, underground tube stations became impromptu bunkers, with civilians organizing evacuation systems within hours. In Tokyo, teenage drone enthusiasts reprogrammed their devices to help search and rescue teams. In Rio, Fedivilla residents created a network of lookouts and safe houses that saved thousands. The Kraxan had expected panic. Instead, they found adaptation. Colonel Harrison stood in the Pentagon's war room 12 hours after his historic victory, watching feeds from around the world. The Kraxan had destroyed 30% of Earth's military infrastructure, but they'd lost the same percentage of their invasion fleet. "They don't understand," he told the Joint Chiefs, pointing to footage of civilians helping soldiers, of communities organizing resistance, of humanity refusing to break. "Every time they hit us, we don't just survive. We learn." A general looked up from his tablet. "Moscow is reporting successful reverse engineering of Kraxan shield fragments. Beijing has decoded parts of their communication protocols. And that teenager in Oslo, she just cracked their basic navigation algorithms using a gaming PC." Harrison smiled, thinking of his daughter. "They thought they were starting a war," he said. "Instead, they just accelerated our evolution." On the screens above, another Kraxan ship fell to primitive human weapons, its destroyers swarming with the same unpredictable patterns that had worked in that first battle. Around the world, humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were taking notes. Emma Rodriguez stared at the half-eaten microwave burrito on her desk and suddenly started laughing. 3 weeks of studying crashed Kraxan shield technology, and the answer had been sitting in front of her the whole time. "Hey, Mad Dog," she called out to Captain Michael Thompson, who was examining alien weapon fragments across the makeshift lab. "Remember when you said their shields looked like soap bubbles?" The Special Forces captain glanced up from his work. "Yeah, the way they ripple when hit. What about it?" Emma grabbed her burrito and sprinted to the testing chamber, her mind racing. Behind her, screens display the aftermath of another Kraxan attack on Seoul. They were running out of time. "Their shield frequency," she said, shoving the burrito into a modified microwave. "We've been trying to match it with laser technology, plasma weapons, everything advanced. But what if?" She switched on the microwave, aimed it at a salvaged piece of Kraxan shielding, and grinned as the alien metal's protective barrier flickered and died. "You've got to be kidding me," Thompson muttered. "Microwaves. The same technology we use to heat leftovers." Emma nodded, already typing calculations. "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons, kinetic impacts, even radiation. But they never thought to protect against something as primitive as microwave radiation. Why would they? No spacefaring civilization uses it as a weapon." Thompson was already on his secure line. "Get me the Joint Chiefs, and find out how many industrial microwaves we can requisition. All of them." The next 48 hours became a blur of activity. Emma's team worked nonstop, converting commercial microwave emitters into shield-disrupting weapons. They weren't elegant. The first prototype looked like a food court microwave strapped to a rifle stock, but they worked. Meanwhile, Thompson's Special Forces team was preparing for their part of the plan. The newly dubbed microwave disruptors would only work at close range, which meant getting near enough to touch a Kraxan ship. "This is insane," Thompson told his team as they studied the schematics of a Kraxan scout ship. "We're going to hijack an alien spacecraft using kitchen appliances and crazy." Actually, one of his operators chimed in. "It's not that different from the casino heist in Ocean's 11. Thompson stared at him. "Explain." "Complex security system, seemingly impenetrable defenses, but one weird vulnerability nobody thought to cover. We just need the right timing and a distraction." That conversation led to Operation George Clooney, which would later be classified as one of the most audacious military operations in human history. Using Emma's microwave disruptors and tactics literally borrowed from heist movies, Thompson's team infiltrated a landed Kraxan scout ship. The alien crew, completely unprepared for close-quarters combat with humans, were overwhelmed in minutes. Their powered armor was useless once Emma's devices knocked out their shields, and they discovered too late that humans had millennia of experience in hand-to-hand fighting. "I still can't believe that worked," Emma said hours later, standing inside the captured ship. Around her, engineers were already reverse engineering everything they could access. Thompson shrugged, nursing a black eye from the boarding action. "Humans are good at 2 things: finding weaknesses and being too stubborn to quit. Today, we did both." The captured ship proved to be a goldmine of technological information. The Kraxan, confident in their superiority, had never bothered to install any serious internal security measures. Their computer systems were accessed using what amounted to a universal administrator password, unchanged for centuries. Within days, production lines worldwide were retooling to mass-produce microwave disruptors. Car factories began manufacturing portable shield breakers. Electronics companies started copying Kraxan navigation systems. Humanity's industrial machine, honed by centuries of competition and innovation, shifted into high gear. Emma watched from her lab as the first squadrons of human fighters were equipped with her invention. On her desk, the half-eaten burrito that had inspired it all was now sealed in clear plastic, destined for the Smithsonian once the war was over. Sometimes, she told Thompson, being primitive just means being creative in ways they've forgotten. The Kraxen were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their ability to turn anything, even their limitations, into an advantage. Lieutenant Commander Diana Wells had spent her weekend at the X Games before the invasion. This fact would later be cited as the reason humanity revolutionized space warfare. "Look at this," she told her squadron, projecting footage of a skateboarder performing an impossible-looking trick. The briefing room of the U.S. Gerald Ford was packed with pilots, their newly retrofitted fighters waiting on the deck above. "What do you see?" "Someone about to break their neck," offered Lieutenant Rodriguez. "I see momentum being redirected," Wells replied. "Now watch this." She switched to footage of a Kraxen battle formation. They move like everyone expects a spaceship to move. Straight lines. Predictable arcs. What if we didn't? The mission that followed would be immortalized in military history as Operation Mosquito. Wells's squadron took their modified F-52s, now equipped with Emma Rodriguez's shield breakers and salvaged Kraxen propulsion tech, and did the unthinkable. They'd fought like extreme sports athletes. Barracuda 3. Execute kickflip pattern. Wells ordered as her squadron engaged a Kraxen destroyer. Her fighter spun in ways that would have torn a normal aircraft apart, the inertial dampeners screaming in protest. The Kraxen commanders watched in bewilderment as Earth fighters performed maneuvers that defied their tactical computers' predictions. Humans were treating space combat like a three-dimensional skate park, using the vacuum to pull off moves that would be impossible in atmosphere. "They're not just pilots anymore," Wells had told her superiors when proposing the strategy. "They're orbital acrobats with weapons." She'd recruited an unlikely team of advisors, professional skateboarders, parkour athletes, and street racers. They spent hours in simulators, teaching pilots how to think about movement in completely new ways. The result was a combat doctrine that turned space warfare into an art form. Barracuda Squadron. Split and drift. Wells's order sent her fighters into a complex series of moves inspired by street dancing. The Kraxen targeting systems, designed to predict traditional space combat maneuvers, couldn't track the seemingly random patterns. Social media exploded as civilian cameras caught glimpses of the battles above. Humans weren't just fighting the aliens, they were doing it with style. Each victory was accompanied by moves that looked more like extreme sports highlights than military engagements. Shark 2, go for the infinite grind. Wells called out, watching as one of her pilots used a disabled Kraxen ship's hull like a cosmic rail, sliding along its length while deploying shield breakers. The move would have been suicidal by conventional wisdom, but conventional wisdom hadn't accounted for human creativity. The Kraxen response was telling. Their ships began to cluster closer together, trying to minimize the spaces that human fighters could exploit for their acrobatics. This only made them more vulnerable to coordinated attacks. "They're still thinking in two dimensions," Wells explained to Admiral Chen during the debriefing. "Even when they move up or down, they're thinking about space like it's an ocean. We're thinking about it like it's a playground." The footage from her squadron's encounters became required viewing at every military academy on Earth. Pilots began developing their own signature moves, treating space combat like a performing art as much as a military engagement. The psychological impact on the Kraxen was profound. They couldn't understand why their enemies seemed to be having fun during battle. Remember, Wells told a class of new recruits, the Kraxen have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They've gotten predictable. But humans, we invented skateboarding, breakdancing, and parkour just because we were bored. Our unpredictability is our strength. As if to prove her point, a video went viral showing one of her pilots performing what the internet dubbed the Cosmic Cobra, a maneuver that involved using a disabled Kraxen fighter as a pivot point for a slingshot attack. The move had been inspired by a child playing with a toy car. "This is why we'll win," Well said, watching the clip. Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we never stopped playing, never stopped imagining new ways to move, new ways to fight. The Kraxen forgot how to innovate. We never will. Above Earth, her squadron continued their deadly dance, turning space warfare into something the galaxy had never seen before and would never forget. Ryan Maverick Mitchell was having the time of his life, which was saying something for a man who'd spent 10 years as Hollywood's top stunt pilot before joining the Air Force. "You're telling me," he said, trying not to laugh during the classified briefing, "that the Kraxen think Top Gun is a documentary?" Dr. Amanda Brooks nodded, her expression caught between amusement and disbelief. "They've been intercepting and analyzing our media broadcasts. Their cultural analysis tagged our action movies as historical combat records. They think that's how we actually fight." The briefing room erupted in laughter, but Admiral Morrison silenced them with a raised hand. "This is now our greatest psychological weapon. The Kraxen are preparing defenses against threats that don't exist because they can't tell our fiction from our history." Mitchell's grin widened. "Permission to exploit this, sir. That's why you're here, Maverick. Make their worst fears come true." Operation Hollywood, as it was unofficially dubbed, became the most entertaining military campaign in human history. Mitchell led a squadron of pilots specifically chosen for their ability to recreate stunts from action movies, making the Kraxen's worst assumptions about human capabilities seem real. Bandit Squadron. Execute Dominic Toretto maneuver. Mitchell called out during their first engagement. His fighters pulled off a synchronized attack pattern straight out of Fast and Furious in Space, a movie the Kraxen had analyzed with growing horror. The alien commanders, having studied Earth's historical records, diverted significant resources to defend against impossible scenarios. They fortified their ships against Sharknadoes, developed countermeasures for Independence Day-style computer viruses, and even prepared for the possibility of humans punching their way through spaceship hulls. They've stationed an entire defensive fleet around the Pacific Ocean, Brooks reported during a strategy meeting. They're convinced Godzilla is real and in hibernation down there. Mitchell's squadron took full advantage, using the Kraxen's misunderstandings to draw forces away from actual strategic targets. When they attacked a Kraxen supply line, they did it while broadcasting the Mission Impossible theme on all frequencies. The psychological impact was devastating. "Check this out," Mitchell told his pilots, showing footage from a captured Kraxen ship. Their tactical displays were cluttered with warnings about potential human threats, most of them pulled straight from science fiction. They had dedicated sensors watching for everything from Transformers to Time Lords. The highlight came during the Battle of Luna Base, when Mitchell's squadron recreated the trench run from Star Wars. The Kraxen, having analyzed that historical footage in detail, committed massive resources to defending exactly the wrong parts of their fleet. They got gravity well projectors set up to counter the force, a reconnaissance officer reported, barely containing her laughter. "They think we're all potential Jedi." But the real genius of Operation Hollywood came from its psychological impact on Earth's population. Every successful mission became instant viral content. Humans weren't just fighting back, they were turning the war into the greatest show in history. "It's not just about military victory," Mitchell explained to a group of new recruits. "It's about morale. Every time we pull off something they think is impossible, we're not just winning a battle, we're winning hearts and minds on both sides." The strategy reached its peak when Mitchell's squadron encountered a Kraxen elite force. Instead of engaging traditionally, they recreated scenes from various action movies simultaneously. One fighter pulled a Die Hard, another went Mission Impossible, while Mitchell himself executed what he called the full Matrix. The Kraxen response was logged in a captured command transmission. "Humans are violating the laws of physics again. Retreat and recalculate defensive protocols." During the debriefing, Admiral Morrison couldn't keep the pride out of his voice. They came expecting to fight primitives. Instead, they're fighting every hero they think is real, all at once. Mitchell just smiled, already planning his next impossible mission. The best part, we haven't even started using the Jackie Chan moves yet. Above Earth, entertainment and warfare had become one, and humanity's greatest fiction was becoming the Kraxen's terrifying reality. Jessica Ghost Anderson hadn't slept in 3 days, sustained only by energy drinks, and the kind of determination that had once made her the FBI's most wanted hacker before they recruited her instead. The captured Kraxen computer core in front of her was proving to be both the most fascinating and frustrating piece of technology she'd ever encountered. "This can't be right," she muttered, squinting at her screen. "Hey, old school, come look at this." James Richardson, known as Old School for his experience dating back to the earliest days of computer security, wheeled his chair over. At 65, he'd come out of retirement the moment the Kraxen arrived. "What have you got, Ghost?" Their entire empire runs on what's basically space Windows 95. No updates, no patches. For thousands of years, from the corner of their makeshift command center, a converted arcade in suburban Denver, 17-year-old Tony Cooper looked up from his gaming rig. "Wait, seriously? That's worse than my dad's computer." The unlikely trio had been brought together by desperate times. Ghost's black hat expertise, Old School's foundational knowledge, and Tommy's prodigy-level coding skills made them humanity's best shot at finding a digital weakness in the Kraxen systems. "It makes sense," Old School said, stroking his gray beard. "They've been the dominant force in the galaxy so long, they never saw the need to upgrade their security. No one's challenged them in millennia." Tommy rolled over on his gaming chair, his laptop covered in stickers from various hackathons. "So what you're saying is, they're basically running an MMO with God mode turned on, but they never patched any of the exploits." Ghost's eyes lit up with the kind of fire that had once let her breach the Pentagon systems, which had also led to her eventual recruitment. "Tommy, you beautiful genius. That's exactly what they're doing." The next 48 hours became a blur of coding, testing, and more energy drinks. They converted the arcade's old Pac-Man cabinet into an additional workstation. Street Fighter I's attract mode provided background music as they worked. Their code, which would become known as the Liberty Virus, took shape on screens throughout the room. "It's like they never heard of buffer overflow attacks," Ghost said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Their whole command and control structure is vulnerable to exploits we figured out in the 1990s. Old School contributed decades of experience in finding system vulnerabilities, while Tommy approached the alien code like it was just another game to be conquered. His experience in finding exploits in online games proved surprisingly relevant." "Look at this," Tommy said, pointing to his screen. "Their ship's life support systems are connected to the same network as their weapons. No air gapping at all. It's like they never imagined someone might hack them." The breakthrough came during a pizza break, when Tommy was explaining to Ghost how he'd once found an exploit in a popular space combat game. The game would check if you had enough resources to fire your weapons, but if you triggered the menu at just the right moment. Ghost nearly choked on her pizza. "That's it. Their whole system uses the same type of verification process, if we can interrupt it at the right moment." Old School was already typing. "We can make their entire network think it's running out of resources." The Liberty Virus took its final form, a piece of code that would spread through the Kraxen network like wildfire, exploiting vulnerabilities they'd never thought to fix, using techniques humanity had mastered decades ago. "It's beautiful," Ghost said, looking at the finished code. "Simple, elegant, and absolutely devastating. And they'll never see it coming," Old School added. "They're looking for advanced cyber attacks. This is digital archaeology." Tommy saved the final version, grinning as he closed his laptop. Best boss fight ever. As their code was transmitted to military command, Ghost looked around the arcade, at the old games that had inadvertently helped prepare humanity for this moment. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The Liberty Virus was ready. The Kraxan Empire, with all its advanced technology, was about to be defeated by the digital equivalent of a stone axe. Simple, brutal, and exactly what they weren't prepared for. Admiral Sarah Steele McCarthy stood on the bridge of the U.S. Enterprise, Earth's first starship cobbled together from salvaged Kraxan tech and human ingenuity. The massive viewscreen showed thousands of Earth vessels, everything from retrofitted aircraft carriers to civilian cargo ships upgraded with alien technology. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her XO announced. "Ghost team confirms the Liberty virus is primed for upload." McCarthy nodded, her expression grim. "Send the signal. Operation Trojan Horse is go." Across Earth's orbit, humanity's fleet began what appeared to be a desperate, last-ditch assault. Their ships moved in traditional military formations, abandoning the chaos tactics that had proven so successful. To the Kraxan observers, it looked like Earth had finally run out of tricks. In her command chair, McCarthy allowed herself a small smile. "They're taking the bait. Signal Mitchell's squadron to begin Phase 2. Ryan Maverick Mitchell led his fighters in a series of increasingly reckless attacks, each one designed to look more desperate than the last. The Kraxan commanders, still consulting their database of Earth's historical combat footage, recognized patterns from a dozen different action movies. "The Kraxan flagship is moving into position." Ghost's voice came through on a secure channel from her arcade command center. "Their network defenses are focused on preventing the kind of cyber attacks they've seen in our movies. They're completely blind to what's actually coming." The battle reached its crescendo as the Kraxan committed their entire invasion force. Their massive ships moved with the confidence of an empire that had never known defeat, their weapons turning space itself into a light show of destructive energy. "Now," McCarthy ordered. In that instant, everything changed. The Liberty virus, hidden in what appeared to be a routine system update, began its work. It spread through the Kraxan network like a digital wildfire, exploiting vulnerabilities their empire had ignored for millennia. "Status report," McCarthy demanded, watching as Kraxan ships began to drift. "Life support systems maintaining minimum levels as planned," Ghost reported. "Weapons are offline. Navigation is compromised. Their entire fleet is running on the equivalent of safe mode." The virus was elegant in its simplicity. It didn't destroy the Kraxan systems. It just made them question every resource request. Their mighty warships, each one capable of destroying a continent, were reduced to checking and double-checking every computer operation like a nervous first-time user. Lieutenant Commander Wells's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, you need to see this. The Kraxan crews. They're taking selfies with their disabled ships." McCarthy blinked. "They're what?" The virus didn't just affect their systems. It gave them access to Earth's social media networks. They're posting about being defeated by primitive but ingenious humans. We're trending on their equivalent of Twitter. The Admiral couldn't help but laugh. Even in defeat, humanity's culture was proving infectious. The Kraxan soldiers, many of whom had never experienced system failure in their lives, were documenting their first taste of technological humility. Ghost to Admiral. Jessica Anderson's voice was filled with satisfaction. "We're detecting massive data transfers from Earth to Kraxan personal devices. They're downloading our movies, music, games, everything." "Ma'am," her XO reported, "the Kraxan flagship is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're requesting to open diplomatic channels and asking if we'll share our entertainment archives." McCarthy stood, straightening her uniform. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Their victory hadn't come from superior firepower or advanced technology. It had come from creativity, adaptability, and the unexpected power of human culture. "Send them our terms," she ordered, "and add unlimited access to Netflix as a gesture of goodwill." Above Earth, the greatest space empire in history was learning a lesson that humanity had known for millennia. Sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't the ones that destroy your enemies, but the ones that turn them into friends. The Liberty virus continued its work, not as a tool of destruction, but as a bridge between civilizations. In the end, humanity had defeated the Kraxan not by being stronger, but by being uniquely, irrepressibly human. Ambassador Rebecca Morrison straightened her jacket as she walked through the halls of the newly constructed Terran Kraxan Cultural Center in downtown Chicago. The building itself was a testament to the unexpected outcome of the war, a perfect fusion of Kraxan crystalline architecture and Earth's classical design, with a food court that served both plasma-grilled alien delicacies and Chicago deep dish pizza. "They're ready for you, Ambassador," her aide whispered, gesturing toward the main auditorium, where the Kraxan Emperor waited to sign the final peace accords. 6 months had passed since Operation Trojan Horse, and the galaxy had changed more in that time than in the previous 1,000 years. The Liberty virus, instead of being purged, had been voluntarily retained by most Kraxan systems. They'd developed a taste for what they called human chaos dynamics. Inside the auditorium, Emma Rodriguez sat next to Captain Thompson, both now cultural celebrities in Kraxan space. Her microwave shield breaker had sparked a renaissance in Kraxan engineering, where they'd begun experimenting with primitive solutions to complex problems. "Did you see the latest?" Thompson whispered to her. "They're starting an extreme sports league in the Antares sector. Apparently, Lieutenant Commander Wells is their technical advisor." Near the front, Jessica "Ghost" Anderson and Tommy Cooper were deep in conversation with a group of young Kraxan tech priests who had become obsessed with Earth's ancient digital wisdom. The arcade where they'd developed the Liberty virus had become a pilgrimage site for alien computer scientists. The Emperor rose as Morrison approached the signing table. Unlike the first Kraxan transmission that had threatened Earth with extinction, he wore casual Earth clothing. Specifically, a vintage rock band t-shirt under his ceremonial robes. It had become something of a fashion statement in Kraxan society. "Before we sign," the Emperor spoke in perfectly accented English, "I must ask one question that has puzzled our scholars. Your entertainment media, the movies and video games, we initially mistook for historical records. Why create such elaborate fictions?" Morrison smiled. "Because humans never stop asking, what if? We imagine possibilities, even impossible ones, because that's how we prepare for the future." The Emperor nodded thoughtfully. "This is why you prevailed where others surrendered. You had already fought us countless times in your imagination." The peace accords were unprecedented in galactic history. Earth gained not just independence, but a special status in the Kraxan Empire as cultural innovation advisors. In return, humanity would share their entertainment, art, and most importantly, their perspective. Colonel Harrison watched from the back of the room with his daughter Jenny, whose video game strategies had inspired Earth's first victory. "Think they'll ever stop studying us?" he asked. Jenny grinned, pointing to a group of Kraxan youngsters practicing skateboarding moves in the center's anti-gravity chamber. "I hope not. They're just starting to learn how to have fun." The ceremony concluded with an unexpected announcement. The Kraxan Empire would be reorganizing into the Galactic Cooperative, with Earth holding a founding seat on the council. Their first joint project, a massive entertainment complex on Mars, combining Kraxan technology with human creativity. "Humanity's greatest weapon was never our ability to fight," Morrison declared in her closing speech, "but our ability to imagine, to create, to find joy even in adversity. We didn't just survive first contact, we showed the galaxy a new way to live." As the crowd dispersed, Dr. Amanda Brooks, who had first decoded the Kraxan transmission, found herself sharing an elevator with a Kraxan scientist. "We've been spacefaring for 50,000 years," the alien admitted, "but you taught us that true advancement isn't just about technology. It's about keeping your spirit of discovery alive." Outside the center, Earth's first spring since the war bloomed with new possibilities. Kraxan ships now arrived carrying tourists and students rather than weapons. Human culture spread across the stars, while Earth's cities gleamed with crystalline spires of alien design. The greatest space empire in history hadn't been destroyed. it had been transformed. And humanity, in teaching their former enemies how to imagine, to play, and to create, had found their true place in the cosmos.